U.S. reveals shocking information. Iran possesses enough material for 11 nuclear bombs. In a stunning revelation, the United States has disclosed that Iran possesses sufficient enriched uranium to construct as many as 11 nuclear weapons. This alarming information comes amidst escalating tensions in the region, with Israel launching intensive airstrikes against both Iranian and Lebanese targets. Harrowing scenes have emerged of Iranian missiles striking civilian infrastructure, and Iran has initiated a large-scale offensive targeting U.S. military bases, leading to casualties. Qatar has also reported casualties amidst the ongoing conflict involving the U.S., Israel, and Iran. Here's a more detailed look at these developments. U.S. discloses Iran's nuclear bomb capacity. Revealed that Iranian negotiators admitted during initial talks earlier this year to possessing enough highly enriched uranium to produce nuclear bombs. During that first meeting, the Iranian negotiators stated without hesitation that they controlled 460 kg of uranium enriched to 60%, and they knew that this amount could create 11 nuclear bombs, WC recalled during an interview with Fox News. He further stated that the Iranian negotiators asserted their unalienable right to enrich nuclear fuel. WC recounted his response, stating, "The U.S. president feels that we have an unalienable right to stop you immediately." Prior to the coordinated U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on Iran on March 28, Washington deployed its largest military force to the Middle East in decades. The U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, reported that they struck over 1,000 targets across Iran within the first 24 hours, marking the commencement of Operation Epic Fury. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber is at the heart of Operation Epic Fury. During the initial mission, approximately 4 B-2s flew round-trip from the United States to strike fortified targets in Iran using guided bombs weighing over 900 kilotons. Israel launches simultaneous airstrikes on Iran and Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, announced that the Israeli Air Force, IAF, had initiated a widespread offensive targeting Iran and the Hezbollah organization in Lebanon. The airstrikes are reportedly occurring simultaneously at multiple locations. The Israeli military has also issued warnings to residents in various parts of Lebanon, including 2 residential areas south of Beirut, to evacuate. In a statement posted on Telegram, IDF spokesperson Avre issued an urgent warning to the people of Lebanon, particularly in the listed villages. "For your safety, leave your homes immediately." The notice listed 50 locations for evacuation. In a separate warning, Andre stated that residents in the Goberi and Haret Hik areas south of Beirut, near Hezbollah facilities and interests, targets of future IDF military operations, should evacuate. U.S. focuses efforts on next 24 hours. Iran faces intense bombardment threat. A senior official told CNN that the U.S. is preparing for a significant increase in attacks on Iran in the next 24 hours. While Israel issued evacuation warnings to residents in parts of Tehran, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio indicated that the most severe blows were yet to come. He stated that the Trump administration believes the campaign's objectives in Iran can be achieved without deploying ground troops. Clarifying the campaign's focus, Rubio emphasized, "Our goal is to destroy their ballistic missile capabilities and ensure they cannot rebuild or exploit those capabilities to maintain or advance their nuclear program. That is the mission's destination." Alongside Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and other security officials are conducting classified briefings on the Iran operation for congressional leaders and key members of the National Security Committees. However, according to The Washington Post, in a rare joint press briefing with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Ken acknowledged that the U.S. military anticipated suffering additional losses as the operation expanded. Ken stated, "Completing the objective will take time, and this will be a difficult and intense mission." Shortly thereafter, the U.S. State Department issued an urgent advisory urging citizens to leave most of the Middle East immediately. Assistant Secretary of State Moran Namdah urged citizens to depart 15 countries and territories using commercial transportation. The list includes conflict hotspots such as Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria, as well as allied nations like Qatar, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Saudi. Major developments still to come. Trump hints at possible U.S. ground involvement. President Trump, in a phone interview with CNN, commented on Iran, "We hit them hard. I think things are going very well, very strongly. We have the greatest military in the world, and we are using that power. The White House leader addressed various topics related to the U.S.-Israeli campaign against Iran that commenced on March 28th, expressing his desire for the conflict not to extend too long. The initial estimated time frame was 2 weeks, and the U.S. is slightly ahead of schedule. When asked if the U.S. would take further action beyond airstrikes to support the Iranian people in reclaiming control of their country, Trump responded affirmatively. Yes, we are really doing that, but right now we want everyone to stay indoors. It is not safe outside, and the situation will become even more dangerous. We have not exerted all of our strength. The largest wave of attacks is yet to come, and it will appear soon. Trump also did not rule out the possibility of deploying U.S. troops to Iran, affirming that he was not swayed by polls indicating public opposition to the attacks. I am not afraid of putting boots on the ground in Iran, the U.S. leader stated. Many other presidents often say that there will be no ground troops, but I am not saying that. Reuters' Ipsos survey conducted last weekend revealed that 43% of Americans opposed the attacks on Iran. However, Trump stated that he was not concerned about these results and emphasized that he must do what is right. President Trump revealed that the biggest surprise for him was that Iran had attacked Arab nations in the region, such as Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE. We used to tell the Arab countries, let us handle this, but now they want to fight, and they are fighting very fiercely, Trump said. Initially, they intended to participate very limitedly, but now they insist on participating, adding that the leaders of the Arab countries were tough and very wise. The U.S. president emphasized that the nuclear threat from Iran has long been a major problem for the region. They have had to live under that dark cloud for many years. That is why you can never have peace. President Donald Trump previously told reporters at the White House that this was our last best chance to eliminate this unacceptable threat posed by this regime. Iran launches major attack impacting U.S. base. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, announced that it had launched a large-scale missile and drone attack on the U.S. airbase in the CXISA area of Bahrain. According to Al Jazeera, the IRGC stated that it deployed 20 drones and 3 missiles, destroying the command building and headquarters of the U.S. airbase and causing fires in fuel storage tanks. Previously, Iran launched ballistic missiles and Shahed UAVs at the Naval Support Activity Base in Bahrain, which houses the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet. Satellite images show that numerous warehouses and radar equipment were damaged. A video circulating online showed a Shahed UAV crashing into an ANTPS-59 radar dome, valued at approximately $300 million USD. This system had been described by the manufacturer as the only mobile radar in the world capable of detecting tactical ballistic missiles with 360-degree coverage. Iran also attacked several targets in Panama's capital and Bahrain's international airport. An American-flagged oil tanker was struck at a port in Bahrain, resulting in one citizen's death. It is known that the U.S. operates 19 permanent and temporary military bases in the Middle East, the largest being Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, which hosts approximately 10,000 soldiers and serves as the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM. 8 permanent U.S. facilities are located in Bahrain, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. As of mid-2025, approximately 40,000 to 50,000 U.S. military personnel are present in the region. In addition, Washington has increased naval power with 2 nuclear aircraft carriers, the USS Abraham Lincoln and USS Alf in Bay 34, carrying more than 130 fighter aircraft. Iran has declared all U.S. bases in the region as legitimate targets. To date, U.S. facilities in at least 6 countries have been attacked. More importantly, Iranian attacks have penetrated several layers of air defense, raising questions about the ability to protect the network of U.S. bases surrounding Iran. The current situation indicates that the conflict is no longer limited to symbolic deterrent strikes. The continued willingness of both sides to escalate raises concerns that the Middle East is entering a new phase of instability with the risk of expanding into a full-scale regional war. Israelis recount horrifying moments as Iranian missiles destroy civilian structures. After an Iranian missile struck a shelter in the town of Bassam in central Israel, the building above the shelter disintegrated. Large concrete blocks were thrown out, destroying cars parked 50 meters away. The missile struck a community protection center that was open to the public, killing at least 9 people, injuring 46, and leaving 11 missing. This is considered the most serious casualty incident in Israel since Iran began retaliating with ballistic missile launches following the coordinated U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on the morning of March 28th. Israeli police reported that the direct hit caused serious damage and caused the building to collapse. Bamanka, 65, said in a trembling voice, "My brother's 3 grandchildren were in the shelter, but they have not been found yet. It is a terrible day. Her house is about 100 meters from the shelter. The windows were shattered, part of the ceiling collapsed, and oranges growing in the garden were blown off the trees by the pressure from the explosion." She admits that she was very lucky because this time she did not run to the shelter when she heard the siren, as usual. That day, because she was too tired, she decided to go down to the shelter in the house. This basement is substandard, and the door was blown off by the explosion at midday on month. Like Ms. Manka, most residents in the neighborhood know each other and have relatives inside the public shelter. Mr. Malevi, a 52-year-old contractor, said, "BXEMS is a small town, so everyone knows each other. His sister took his 88-year-old mother out of the apartment that he had just finished renovating last week, just 2 hours before the attack. Although not too close to where the missile landed, the apartment was still damaged, losing windows and a hole in the roof. Here, it is only material damage. It can be fixed. Over there, money cannot save people's lives, not to mention the loss to the community," he said. Since the outbreak of fighting, Israel has intercepted most of the missiles from Iran. However, the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, warns that air defense systems cannot guarantee to intercept every missile. At the scene of the explosion, rescue teams worked overnight to continue searching for missing persons while police and military officers dispersed hundreds of onlookers to prevent another attack. On the opposite side, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, of Iran stated that the recent passing of the supreme leader and other senior officials did not shake Iran, but instead made it stronger. The IRGC declared that Iran would continue to fight until the enemy was defeated. The IRGC warned opponents to know that their good days were over and that they would no longer be safe anywhere in the world, even in their own homes. Iran mourns the death of the wife of Supreme Leader Khamenei. Iranian media reported that the wife of Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Ms. Mansour Biada, had passed away due to serious injuries sustained in the U.S. and Israeli attacks. Accordingly, Ms. Bakhtiari, 79, had been in a coma since being injured in the attack on March 28th. She passed away on the 0th of the month. She was the only wife of Grand Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They married in 1964. The supreme leader and many senior Iranian officials were killed in the attack on the complex where he worked. She was born into a prominent religious family in Mashhad, Iran's second-largest city. Her father, Mr. Mohammad Esman Khojaste Bakhade, was a well-known businessman in the region. Her brother, Mr. Hassan Khojaste Bakhade, served as deputy director of the Iranian National Radio and Television, IRB, and first met Mr. Ali Khamenei in 1964 at a private event. The two married in 1965, with the wedding sermon reportedly delivered by renowned cleric Mohammad Hadi Malani. Despite being married to one of the most influential figures in the Islamic Republic of Iran, she lived very discreetly and rarely participated in political events, instead focusing on her family and religious obligations. According to Fast News Agency, many members of Mr. Kane's family, including his daughters, sons-in-law, and granddaughters, also died in the U.S. and Israeli attack on Iran. The deaths of family members, direct relatives of the supreme leader, are expected to increase domestic pressure on the Tehran government while continuing to fuel regional tensions. Iranian officials have repeatedly warned that attacks on the country will face a devastating response. 100,000 Israeli reservists ready to enter Lebanon amid escalating tensions. Israeli military spokesman Izzadin said that all options are still being considered when asked about the possibility of launching a ground operation in Lebanon after Izzadin faced a new front. Previously, Hezbollah fired 6 shells towards northern Izzadin, prompting Izzadin to launch a series of intense retaliatory airstrikes against Beirut and southern Lebanon. In a press conference, General Fi Drin said, "We have mobilized nearly 100,000 reservists, dozens of battalions, brigades, and divisions deployed to protect the northern border and are ready for all scenarios, both defense and attack. All options are being considered. We are constantly assessing the situation. Mr. Diafin said that the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, had attacked dozens of Hezbollah command centers and launchers while targeting senior commanders. Sudan has repeatedly launched airstrikes against Hezbollah targets in Lebanon since the ceasefire agreement was expected to take effect in 2024, accusing Iranian-backed forces of violating the agreement by reorganizing and rearming. However, the scale of recent IDF attacks is considered significantly larger. Mr. D. Finn declared, Hezbollah opened fire. We warned them they will pay the price. We are well prepared. While NDTV reported that Mohammed Raat, leader of Hezbollah's parliamentary bloc in the Lebanese parliament, was killed in Israeli airstrikes. He was considered one of Hezbollah's senior figures in southern Lebanon. Previously, he was repeatedly appointed by Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah as his personal spokesman. The Lebanese front is becoming a new hotspot in the broader conflict picture in the Middle East. China speaks out after citizen killed in Iran. Ms. Mao Ning, spokeswoman for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said that a Chinese citizen in Tehran was recently affected by the military conflict and unfortunately died, and sent her deepest condolences to the victim's family. According to Ban Nin, as of the 2nd of the month, approximately 3,000 Chinese citizens have been evacuated from Iran. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Ma Nin also said in a press conference, the most urgent task is to end military operations and prevent the conflict from spreading, calling for a resolution through dialogue and negotiation. According to Reuters, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman accused the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran of violating international law and stated that China was extremely concerned about the spillover effects on neighboring countries. Meanwhile, the Japanese government said it is making every effort to ensure the safety of Japanese citizens in Iran and neighboring countries. About 200 Japanese people are currently in Iran. Many of them are said to be unable to leave quickly due to family or business matters. The Japanese Foreign Ministry is considering the possibilities, including assisting those seeking to leave Iran to evacuate to neighboring countries by land. The ministry intends to decide how to do this after considering the number of people wishing to evacuate, the regional situation, and other factors. Worst-case scenario in Middle East. Unexpected major development about to happen. Gulf states are facing a difficult choice after Iranian missiles attack their cities, remain passive, or accept the risk of being seen as fighting alongside Israel. It can be seen that the immediate concern of Gulf leaders is focused on their most vulnerable infrastructure. Monica Max, a professor of Middle Eastern politics at New York University Abu Dhabi, pointed out what she called a true nightmare scenario. Attacks on power grids, water desalination plants, and energy infrastructure. Professor Max stated that without air conditioning and water desalination systems, the already scorching and arid Gulf states would essentially become uninhabitable. Furthermore, without energy infrastructure, they would have no revenue. Consequently, Gulf nations will likely take whatever measures they deem least damaging to those core interests. However, Dropjes Pinf, a faculty member at King's College London, argues that the deeper threat is not physical but reputational. He warned that the long-term damage would affect the soft power of the Gulf states, their image as havens of stability and predictability for investment and tourism in an otherwise volatile region. These attacks, he stated, undermine that reputation. Meanwhile, the attacks on Iran occurred just a month before a scheduled meeting between President Xi Jinping and then U.S. President Donald Trump in China. According to Bluebird, the U.S. leader's further disruption of a Beijing partner risks escalating tensions between the world's two largest economies. Bloomberg quoted George Chen, an expert at the consultancy The Asia Group, who questioned how Xi Jinping could feel that everything is normal and okay and prepare to welcome Trump in a cheerful mood. Chen suggested that investors should temper their expectations of what Trump could achieve during his trip to China, if he even still made the journey. Chen also noted that instability in Iran would likely draw China and Russia closer as Xi seeks to secure oil supplies. This closer relationship with Russia would allow President Xi Jinping to ensure the necessary oil imports for his country while President Trump's actions threaten oil supplies from the Middle East. The escalating conflict in Iran has left the Asian economy on edge, reacting to every development. The Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, an ally of Iran, has officially entered the conflict by attacking Israel, seeking to relieve pressure on Tehran. In response, Israel has struck Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, On the same day, an Israeli airstrike in Beirut was reported to have killed Hussein Marl, the head of Hezbollah's intelligence, also on date redacted. The U.S. and Israel continued their attacks on Iran. In retaliation, Iran simultaneously attacked numerous targets, including U.S. military bases or facilities with a U.S. military presence in regional countries such as Egypt, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, announced that it had targeted approximately 500 U.S. and Israeli locations in the region, leading to the disruption of oil and gas exploration and processing activities in these countries. Notably, the Saudi oil giant Aramco ceased operations in Ras Tanura following a UAV attack. This facility is the largest oil refinery in Saudi Arabia and one of the largest in the Middle East, with a capacity exceeding 500,000 barrels per day. Similarly, Qatar announced the cessation of LNG production at Ras Laffan, a critical facility of Qatar Energy, the world's largest LNG producer, and a site slated to supply approximately 10 billion cubic meters of LNG to the UK this year. This disruption could significantly impact the United Kingdom, adding to the complexity. Saraya Alia al-Dam, an Iraqi Shia militant group, claimed responsibility for a UAV attack on U.S. troops at an airport in Baghdad on date redacted. In a related development, a British Royal Air Force base located on the island of Cyprus in the Mediterranean, approximately 300 kilometers from Lebanon, also suffered minor damage from a UAV attack. In an analysis from date redacted, Moody's Analytics warned that escalating conflict in the Middle East carries the risk of new shocks to energy, trade, and inflation. According to Moody's, Iran's retaliation via missiles and UAVs targeting Israel and countries hosting U.S. forces, including the UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, has significantly impacted oil and gas supplies. Moreover, the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial maritime route for oil and gas shipments, may face closure while hostilities increase the risk of further disruptions in the Red Sea and across the Middle East. The closure of airspace has exacerbated the situation, affecting passenger travel and the flow of goods through a region that is one of the world's most vital trade corridors. Asian economies are particularly vulnerable as they import the majority of their oil and gas from the Middle East. Most of the exported crude oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz, heading to major Asian economies such as China, India, Japan, and South Korea. Approximately 20% of global LNG trade also transits this strait. This conflict also complicates matters for India, a significant oil importer from the Middle East that has agreed to gradually reduce its purchases of Russian oil as part of a trade agreement with the U.S. High-income Asian economies, heavily reliant on imported goods, are especially susceptible to the direct economic consequences of this conflict. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Singapore, and Hong Kong import over 80% of their domestic energy consumption. These economies are also heavily dependent on food imports. Therefore, the conflict in the Middle East is increasing trade instability in Asia with broader global economic implications. Reports surfaced of staggering casualties throughout the Middle East as a result of the conflict. Al Jazeera cited information from the Iranian Red Crescent stating that U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Tehran and other regions since date redacted have resulted in 555 deaths and hundreds of injuries, according to Israel. Their claim that Iran wants to develop nuclear weapons is a blatant lie. The facility serves peaceful purposes, Najafi stated. According in a recent statement, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, reported a fourth U.S. service member killed in the conflict with Iran. The service member, injured in initial Iranian attacks, ultimately succumbed to their injuries. The Times of Israel cited information from the Israeli National Center of Forensic Medicine stating that Iranian retaliatory attacks since date redacted have resulted in at least 9 Israeli citizen deaths and 40 injuries. Among the deceased, 6 fatalities occurred in the town of B. Redacted, and the Israeli Air Force is investigating why air defense units there failed to intercept the Iranian missiles. According to Al Jazeera, Iranian retaliatory attacks targeting U.S. military bases in the Middle East have also caused casualties in other countries in the region. For example, in Egypt, attacks on a U.S. military base in the country resulted in at least 1 death and 32 injuries. In Qatar, 16 injuries were reported. In the United Arab Emirates, UAE, local authorities confirmed 3 deaths and 58 injuries. Meanwhile, the fighting between Israel and Iran has entered its third day and has spread to numerous countries in the region. On date redacted, several major cities in the Gulf reported large explosions. AFP reported multiple loud explosions in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, UAE, Doha, Qatar, Manama, Bahrain, and Cairo, Egypt. These developments occurred amid continued Iranian attacks on countries in the region hosting U.S. military bases in response to U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on date redacted. The Associated Press, AP, quoted witnesses who reported seeing smoke rising from the area housing the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, as embassy personnel had previously been instructed to avoid the area. An Iraqi armed group with close ties to Iran stated that a military base in the Jerf al-Nasser area of southern Iraq had been subjected to multiple airstrikes. Iraq has stated it does not want to be drawn into the current conflict. With shipping disrupted in the Strait of Hormuz, Russia warned that the world faces a new shock. According to maritime sources and regional officials, 3 tankers were damaged off the Gulf after the U.S. and Israel launched attacks on Iran, prompting retaliatory actions and escalating tensions that have put maritime trade at direct risk. Iran announced it had halted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz, often described as the jugular vein of global oil flow, lies between Iran and Oman and is the sole gateway from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. In 2024, approximately 20 million barrels of crude oil passed through it daily, representing almost 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil trade. In addition to crude oil, approximately 20 to 30% of the world's liquefied natural gas, LNG, trade depends on this narrow waterway. In other words, Hormuz is like the master valve of the global energy system. Marine traffic data indicated that over 200 vessels, including numerous oil and LNG tankers, have anchored around the Strait of Hormuz and adjacent waters within a 24-hour period. The soaring risk of hostilities has forced shipowners to suspend journeys temporarily, pending a security assessment. A Palau-flagged tanker already under U.S. sanctions was attacked off the coast of Oman's Musandam Peninsula, injuring 4 people. According to the Oman Maritime Security Center, the specific cause has not been released. Meanwhile, the Marshall Islands-flagged crude oil tanker MKD Viam was struck by an object while transiting approximately 44 nautical miles northwest of Muscat. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations, UKMTO, reported that a merchant vessel carrying cargo reported an explosion in the same area. At the Jebel Ali port in the UAE, a tanker was nearly struck by debris from an aerial interception during Iran's attacks on Gulf states. Another refueling tanker was also damaged off the UAE. Faced with the risk of escalation, the U.S. Maritime Administration advised ships to avoid transiting the Strait of Hormuz and the entire Gulf of Oman due to the potential for continued retaliatory attacks. The agency also instructed U.S.-flagged or U.S.-affiliated vessels to maintain a minimum distance of 30 nautical miles from U.S. military vessels to reduce the risk of misidentification. Simultaneously, the Russian Foreign Ministry warned that any complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz could cause severe disruptions to the global oil and gas market. Many shipowners, oil and gas corporations, and traders have suspended the transport of crude oil, fuels, and LNG through the strait following the attacks and military responses. Iran unveiled a network of UAV and missile tunnels, allegedly prepared for strikes on U.S. bases. Recently, Iran released a video purportedly showing tunnels housing unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, storing weapons allegedly used to attack U.S. bases in the region. The video, published by the state news agency FARS, showed rows of UAVs in fortified underground tunnels or positioned on rocket launch pads. The Iranian flag and images of the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei were displayed on the walls. The footage also depicted rockets and UAVs being launched from various locations, directed at targets that FARS described as U.S. bases in the Middle East. The video concluded with the message, "Wait for the death knell to sound once more," conveying a stark warning. Observers suggest that the release of this video is part of Tehran's media campaign following the coordinated attacks between the U.S. and Israel on Iran. There is no independent confirmation of the timing or location of the video, nor is it clear whether the missiles and UAVs shown in the footage were actually used in Iran's retaliatory attacks. Unexpected bombs amidst negotiations shatter U.S. credibility. The conflict between the U.S.-Israel alliance and Iran, occurring during negotiations, exposes President Trump's smoke and mirrors diplomatic strategy. In the world of diplomacy, even sworn enemies require a minimum level of trust to conduct negotiations. However, for President Trump, who has always portrayed himself as a master dealmaker, the strategy of using force during negotiations is setting a troubling precedent. According to experts, this action may provide short-term advantages but erodes U.S. credibility for years to come. Mr. Greminger, head of the Geneva Center for Security Policy, described this as an abuse of diplomacy to conceal a military operation, warning that in the future, countries will need to think carefully before recommitting if they face this kind of insincere behavior. Disrupting nuclear talks with bombs, as the U.S. recently did, is making the prospect of peace more distant than ever. After launching the attacks, officials in the Trump administration immediately asserted that the conflict erupted because the nuclear negotiations mediated by Oman had reached a dead end. However, just hours after the bombings, Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busayidi declared, active and serious negotiations were once again disrupted. While Trump supporters argue that a willingness to use force only strengthens the U.S. position at the negotiating table, analysts are more concerned, predicting that many countries will secretly build nuclear weapon systems, considering them the best defense against U.S. intervention. Riki, an expert at the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, stated that the deterrent value of nuclear bombs is now very clear. Everyone in the Iranian leadership understands that if they had a bomb, they would not have been bombed. Many international experts believe that Iran will spend a short amount of time flexing its muscles against the U.S., Israel, and their regional allies, and will then prioritize resolving internal issues and addressing the Middle East situation, indicating there will be many significant changes. The New York Times suggests that a severely weakened Iran will no longer be able to deter its neighbors as before. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is dead, but another will take his place. The murdered military commanders will be replaced. A political system built steadily over the past 47 years will not easily collapse. Even under the weight of aerial attacks, Iran still has the capability to respond to U.S. and Israeli airstrikes, and the outcome of the conflict remains uncertain. Japan and Thailand are implementing responses to Middle East instability. In response to the complex military developments in the Middle East, Japan is urgently assisting its citizens in evacuating from Israel and Iran, while Thailand is also implementing a series of measures to address instability in the region. Regarding Japanese citizens living and working in Israel, plans are being implemented to evacuate people to neighboring countries by land starting as early as date redacted. Efforts are underway to quickly gather citizens wishing to evacuate and ensure the safety of travel routes. Meanwhile, regarding Japanese citizens in Iran, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will make specific decisions based on the actual situation in Iran and the number of people wishing to evacuate. Previously, Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi instructed relevant ministries to strengthen information gathering and take all necessary measures to ensure the safety of Japanese citizens stranded in the Middle East, recommending that citizens evacuate the region as soon as possible. According to the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are currently approximately 1,000 Japanese citizens living and working in Israel, while there are approximately 220 in Iran. As the conflict between Iran, the U.S., and Israel continues to escalate, with the potential to prolong, interim Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has also directed relevant ministries to closely monitor the situation and urgently implement response plans to ensure national interests and security. In line with the directives of interim Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul, Thai authorities have activated numerous emergency measures in response to the unstable situation in the Middle East. Regarding citizen protection, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has established a blank task force to continuously monitor the situation and coordinate joint efforts to ensure maximum safety for Thai citizens in the region. The Ministry of Labor has also opened hotlines and strengthened coordination to support Thai workers in the Middle East, particularly the over 65,000 workers in Israel. The Royal Thai Air Force has stated that it has placed its forces on standby and can implement a citizen evacuation plan as soon as requested. Thailand's National Security Council is scheduled to meet to consolidate an action plan, ensuring synchronized and comprehensive implementation. In a recent statement, interim Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul emphasized the need for Thailand to maintain the most neutral stance possible while prioritizing the protection of its citizens. Thailand has also called on all parties to promote dialogue, prioritize diplomatic solutions, and establish peace as soon as possible. Putin has made a strong statement, ready to de-escalate U.S.-Iran tensions. Amidst reports of U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran, Russian President Vladimir Putin recently declared in a phone call with Bahrain's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa that Moscow is ready to seize every opportunity to stabilize the situation in the Middle East. Both leaders expressed deep concern about the risk of conflict spreading throughout the Middle East, potentially leading to disastrous consequences. President Putin stressed the need to handle the current extremely dangerous situation through political and diplomatic measures instead of further military escalation. For his part, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman suggested that Russia could play a positive role in stabilizing the situation due to its friendly relations with Iran and many other countries in the Gulf region. The Russian side believes that current developments also threaten the security of many Arab countries that have friendly relations with Russia. The Kremlin's press service reported that in that spirit, Vladimir Putin affirmed Russia's readiness to use all possible means to actively contribute to stabilizing the situation in the region. Not only that, the Kremlin also said that Putin also spoke with the president of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, about escalating military developments. The UAE's state news agency WM reported that the two sides discussed Iran's attacks on UAE territory and several Arab countries and assessed the impact of the conflict on international peace and stability. The two leaders called for an immediate end to the escalation and prioritized diplomatic dialogue. The Russian president also spoke by phone with the Emir of Qatar, Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, and King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. All parties expressed hope that the conflict would soon be contained and that disagreements would be resolved through political measures based on the principles of mutual respect and equality. According to RT, Putin affirmed that Russia is ready to use all possible measures to help stabilize the region. On the same day, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also spoke with his Saudi Arabian counterpart, Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, reaffirming his position of supporting an immediate end to hostilities and protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure in Iran and neighboring countries. Ukraine faces a series of challenges as the U.S. strikes Iran. Ukraine, a country that chanted glory to the United States after destroying the leader of Iran, still does not understand that the previous peace plan to end the military plan is no longer waiting for them. The U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran, pushing the Strait of Hormuz, the world's oil lifeline, into a risky situation, raised the risk of a fuel price crisis. Last year, more than 14 million barrels of crude oil per day passed through this strait, equivalent to one-third of the world's total seaborne fuel exports. According to data from Kepler, about three-quarters of the oil barrels are shipped to China, India, Japan, and South Korea. In particular, half of China's crude oil imports pass through this strait. In the most pessimistic scenario, analysts predict that if oil tankers cannot pass through the Strait of Hormuz or energy infrastructure is destroyed, oil prices could jump to about $100 or even $140 per barrel. If this sea route is completely blockaded, this scenario would greatly benefit Russia. Moscow could become the main energy supplier to China and quickly make up for budget deficits caused by sanctions. Higher revenue would provide the Kremlin with important resources to maintain military operations, ensure social security, and stabilize taxes. The shared border between China and Russia ensures that the supply of Russian raw materials to China will not be interrupted even if the U.S. imposes a complete sea blockade. In return, at Moscow's request, Beijing will almost certainly increase its support. That support could include a sharp increase in shipments of drones, spare parts, and battlefield robots. Ukraine imports energy and will face additional costs at a time when the country's budget is already in deficit. The European Union, the main sponsor of Kyiv, may face a dilemma: continue lending money to the Ukrainian government or divert resources to domestic subsidies to avoid social instability as oil and gas prices rise. Both issues are vital to maintaining Ukraine's armed forces. Tightening of the budget in Brussels could weaken military supplies and financial support at the same time. Ukraine is facing a serious shortage of interceptor missiles for its air defense system, especially U.S.-made missiles. The U.S. has spent a large amount of ammunition in the conflict with Iran. With U.S. national interests at stake, Washington may prioritize transferring missiles to the Middle East. This shift will further weaken Ukraine's already weak missile defense system. When the U.S. finally shifts from military escalation to diplomacy, it may negotiate with Iran not through Oman, but through Moscow and at the expense of Ukraine. In that scenario, the current conditions for ending the military plan, including the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from Donbas, may seem relatively favorable compared to what could happen next. Ukraine's jamming of Russian reconnaissance ships causes shock in the Black Sea. As the conflict enters its fifth year, Ukraine continues to surprise observers with precise attacks on strategic Russian targets in the Black Sea. One of the most notable cases is the electronic reconnaissance ship Ivan Kurs, a ship often seen as the eyes and ears of the Russian Navy, which has almost disappeared from operations at sea. Newly released images show Ivan Kurs docked in Sevastopol with visible damage to the hull. According to local sources, this ship has not been at sea for nearly 2 years. Previously, in May 2023, a Ukrainian USV uncrewed surface vessel was said to have traveled more than 500 kilometers across the Black Sea to approach and attack a target in the northeast area of the Bosphorus Strait. Other reports also mention the possibility of the ship continuing to be attacked in May 2024. Although there is no full confirmation of every attack, satellite data and images at the port show that Ivan Kurs was towed back to Sevastopol in a damaged state and has not appeared in patrol operations since. On the other hand, Russia has denied that the ship was attacked. During the Cold War, Soviet reconnaissance ships often lurked off the coasts of the U.S. and its allies, using electronic collection equipment to identify military locations and other systems. Today, that role is performed by larger and more modern reconnaissance ships. Ivan Kurs of the Russian Black Sea Fleet is one of them. Ivan Kurs is a medium-sized Russian reconnaissance ship designed to operate in seas and oceans. This is the first ship of Project 12280 and one of 2 ships built according to this design. The ship joined the Russian Black Sea Fleet in June 2018. The ship is named after Vice Admiral Ivan Kurs, who led Soviet naval intelligence from 1979-1987. The ship has the ability to conduct radio reconnaissance and electronic warfare. Billionaire Elon Musk makes a big turning point in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. FP News Agency announced in mid-month an analysis of the Ukrainian war situation based on data from the U.S.-based Institute for the Study of War, ISW, stating that Ukraine had regained 91 kilometers of territory in the counteroffensive from the 11th to the 15th, including 86 kilometers in the area about 80 kilometers east of the city of Zaporizhzhia. According to AFP, this is the largest area that Ukraine has regained in such a short period of time. Since the counteroffensive campaign in June 2023, ISW said that the reason why Ukraine achieved progress may be due to Russian forces being blocked from accessing the Starlink satellite internet service. ISW said that Russian military bloggers believe that the loss of Starlink connection is causing some communication and command problems on the battlefield. Elon Musk's SpaceX began requiring Starlink terminal authentication from the 4th. Only devices that have been approved and are on the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense's whitelist can continue to operate. Russian soldiers almost immediately complained that Cosmos and Shinka, the code names they gave to the Starlink service and Telegram social network, had stopped working. Eunice Insider cited the content of radio exchanges that Ukrainian forces intercepted from the enemy, saying, a Russian soldier said, "It's terrible they cut off all the Starlink transceivers." Another person said that the connection was completely lost, no more images could be transmitted. Reconnaissance soldiers of the Ukrainian Borevy Brigade and the Mustang Company said that they noticed that the frequency with which Russian forces fired artillery shells had dropped sharply on the first day that SpaceX began requiring Starlink authentication. The number of attacks by unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, also decreased significantly. Ukrainian military commanders said that the operational efficiency of Russian UAVs had decreased sharply, opening up opportunities for Ukraine to regain the initiative in many areas of combat. Commander of the 3rd Ukrainian Corps, Andriy Bessarab, affirmed that Russia's loss of access to Starlink has had a huge impact on Moscow's combat capabilities. He emphasized, however, in the near future, even in the next 3 to 5 years, they are unlikely to restore their effectiveness as before. The Starlink system developed by billionaire Elon Musk's SpaceX is currently the backbone of battlefield communications Middle East gathering. Israel, according Iranian, he is not the Israel, the idea after this move, the U.S. amid is according the move, former speaking, no the F before, meanwhile, the more speaking analyst major, that is it. However, U.S. currently, however, while REA mode at the most, however, Ms. representing the National Parents Leadership Council, Ms. Gia LB criticized the inconsistencies in practical implementation, particularly concerning psychological support for young children. The guidelines for educators are only recommendations, leading to significant disparities between institutions. Some kindergarten teachers proactively contact each student, while in other places there is absolutely no connection, she noted, highlighting the uneven support provided. The emergency meeting was convened as Israel develops response plans for rapidly escalating scenarios with Iran, aiming to ensure the education system is prepared for potential wartime situations. The Vietnamese embassy in Israel issued an urgent notice to its citizens. Fellow citizens, the announcement began, according to information from the embassy on the morning of date, Israel launched a preemptive strike against several military targets and strategic infrastructure in Iran. Based on a situation assessment, the Israel Homefront Command decided to transition the operational status nationwide from full operation to maintaining only essential services. As a result, all educational activities are temporarily suspended, public gatherings are prohibited, and businesses and workplaces are closed, except for essential services. This policy is effective from 8 o'clock a.m. on date to 8 p.m. on date. Residents are urged to stay close to bomb shelters, closely monitor missile alerts, and be ready to act immediately upon hearing sirens. In conjunction, Israeli airspace has been closed to civilian flights until further notice, and all commercial flights to and from Israel are temporarily suspended. Several foreign embassies in Israel, including those of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Poland, have also advised their citizens to comply with local authorities' instructions, limit unnecessary travel, and prepare plans to leave Israel if conditions permit. Light of the situation, to ensure the absolute safety of its citizens and their property, the Vietnamese embassy in Israel urges the Vietnamese community to strictly adhere to the following. First, fully comply with the regulations and instructions regarding security and safety measures issued by local authorities. Regularly update information through Vietnamese associations and groups in Israel to stay informed and exchange information as needed. Second, limit travel between cities during this sensitive period, try to stay near areas with bomb shelters, proactively develop plans to ensure the safety of yourselves and your families, and be prepared to return to Vietnam or move to a third country when permitted. Third, maintain regular contact with the embassy. In case of emergency or need for citizen protection assistance, please contact the hotline at +9 25616 and +9 72508783373. The Vietnamese embassy in Israel stated that it will continue to closely monitor the situation and promptly update information to the community. This move by the Vietnamese embassy in Israel reflects the unprecedented level of tension in the region. On a broader scale, a host of other countries have also issued similar advisories, urging their citizens to leave Iran and Israel urgently due to the risk of military escalation. According to a Vietnam news agency correspondent in the Middle East, the U.S. Embassy in Israel confirmed on date that the U.S. State Department had authorized non-essential government personnel and their families to leave Israel due to security risks, while warning others to consider departing while commercial flights are still operating. Notably, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Micha, sent an email to embassy staff emphasizing that anyone wishing to leave Israel must do so immediately on date. The email was sent at 10:24 a.m. local time. Ambassador Huckabee stressed that the need to leave may lead to increased airfare and that the top priority now is to leave the country as quickly as possible. Several other countries have also issued warnings to their citizens. Australia has requested that family members of diplomatic staff in Israel and Lebanon depart. Poland, Sweden, India, and Canada have advised their citizens to leave Iran as soon as possible before the tense situation further escalates. Meanwhile, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Vo Tak, expressed extreme concern about the risk of military escalation in the region and hoped that the voice of reason would prevail. These warnings were issued as the latest round of negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in Geneva, Switzerland, concluded without an agreement. Despite earlier stern warnings from U.S. President Donald Trump about the potential for an attack, In his latest statement, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Bad Arachi called on the U.S. reduce its excessive demands so that the two sides can reach an agreement, and said that the two sides will hold technical negotiations at the VNO on date before entering the fourth round of negotiations next week. Regarding the outcome of the negotiations, the Israeli newspaper Jerusalem Post quoted sources familiar with the matter as saying that many issues had been clarified in the third round of negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, and that the parties are continuing to work to build a framework for an agreement. Omani Foreign Minister Barbin Hamad Anbus also described the discussions as having made significant progress and confirmed that the next round of negotiations between the U.S. and Iran would take place at the VNO next week. Meanwhile, the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Gur will dock off the coast of Israel on date. Prior to that, on the evening of date, Commander of the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, Admiral Brad Cooper briefed President Trump on potential military options against Iran. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Jian Ken also attended the meeting. Iran-Israel war, who will strike the decisive blow? Ladies and gentlemen, if tensions between Iran and Israel escalate following a preemptive strike from Theo Avi, the question arises, which side will the military balance lean towards? According to the 2025 Global Firepower Index published by Global Firepower, Israel ranks 15th in the world, just above Iran at 16th. This close ranking suggests a relatively tight balance, but Israeli armed forces are still rated as slightly superior. However, a deeper dive into each factor reveals many layers of contrast. Iran's population is significantly larger, with approximately 88.4 million people compared to Israel's 9.4 million. The number of people of military service age in Iran is 49.5 million, while Israel has approximately 3.95 million. Each year, Iran can add more than 1.4 million new recruits, while Israel only has about 132,000 people reaching conscription age annually. Iran's active military personnel number around 610,000, significantly higher than Israel's 170,000. However, Israel has a larger reserve force of 465,000 compared to Iran's 350,000. Conversely, the financial advantage clearly leans towards Israel, whose defense budget reaches $30.5 billion USD, nearly double Iran's $15.45 billion US, enabling significant investment in military technology and modern weapon systems. Israel's foreign exchange reserves also reach $204.6 billion USD, higher than Iran's $120.6 billion US, indicating better financial capacity to sustain prolonged military operations. The air both maintain significant forces. Iran operates 551 aircraft, including 188 fighters and 87 transport aircraft. Israel possesses 611 aircraft, including 240 fighters and 13 transport aircraft. In specialized missions, Israel stands out with 19 special mission aircraft compared to Iran's 10 and 48 attack helicopters, significantly higher than Iran's 13. While Iran has a numerical advantage in some categories, Israel is rated higher in equipment quality, especially in precision strike capabilities and tactical flexibility. On the ground, Iran has the advantage in traditional firepower with 1,713 tanks and nearly 66,000 armored vehicles compared to Israel's 1,300 tanks and 35,985 armored vehicles. Iran's number of mobile missile launchers reaches 1,517, far exceeding Israel's 183, giving it a significant advantage in barrage capabilities. However, Israel compensates with highly mobile systems and precision-guided weapons. Iran operates 107 ships of all types, while the Israeli Navy is smaller but focused on modern missile ships and strategically deterrent submarines. Neither possesses aircraft carriers. Iran has 25 submarines, while Israel has 5, but Israeli naval technology is rated highly in regional defense capabilities. Overall, Iran has the advantage in manpower and traditional firepower, while Israel stands out in technology, finance, and modern warfare capabilities. The small difference in ranking shows that any escalating scenario would be a severe test for both sides.